No.
Because
I
you
just
have a...
can't even... This is beyond my sphere of even comprehension.
I know.
What we're talking about now.
But this
is the real world,
but
Julia.
But this is what happens. This is what happens in
I feel
general
like I'm
everyday
almost
life.
in a surreal
But this is
world
what happens.
now,
This is
what you're discussing is not something I don't even, it doesn't even come into my
But
radar.
going back to our initial point, this
why-
is why we need to be intolerant of even the smallest, most seemingly benign act of prejudice. And this is why there are militant people. I'm very militant. My ex-boyfriend said to me, you might be disabled in your left arm, but you've got a damn good right hook.
Yeah.
But I've had to be like that, because otherwise I don't get the respect. Let them hate so long as they fear. Because you have to, because these people approach you from a position of immediately assuming that they are superior and stronger than you are,
And I think-
and that they can bully
Are
you.
you talking about power over as opposed to power with and to?
No.
Because I understand
there is a
there is
difference. There is a difference. But
assert
then,
power over.
No,
Which you can apply to on a daily basis. That happens, doesn't it?
No, it's not the same, Julia.
no, because
What is power?
Feeling like you're in control of someone else.
I put out an aura of don't fuck with me.
Yeah, you do. You really do.
Because I know that if I go, oh, I'm a sweet little whatever,
But then
and you can fuck with me, then I invite
What-
the idiots to come and fuck with
when
me.
women do,
And that's what
I
women are told to
find-
be all the time.
Yeah,
This,
and
can I
that's
just
wrong.
tell you my experience when I try and assert some sort of autonomy. I notice that sometimes, or what I've seen from other people, is that when a woman especially tries to assert autonomy, she's told she's entitled. Whereas if a man does it, he's seen as
Because he wants
reasonable.
her. He wants her to be vulnerable.
But it's because that's the way society has painted how women should behave.
to make them vulnerable.
And if you go in meek and mild and go, oh, isn't that lovely? I like fluffy little kittens.
Yeah.
You instantly put yourself into a little box where you're going to be treated.
I understand.
No, but if you don't, though, act like you're pink fluffy kittens, men won't want to have sex with you. And then, how would you cope?
So ultimately,
No one will want you. Meow.
do you,
Couldn't help.
but again, it's whether you feel you have enough justification in yourself to go, I feel I'm happy with myself and I fuck you and I'm the rest of the world. And if a guy comes along and wants to fuck me, then fine, as long as I want to fuck him. And it's your choice.
That's a bit crude.
Yeah,
Anyway.
it is a crude.
Oh,
it's
shut up.
very
Stop being
crude.
so misogynist. What did you
is
swear?
crude.
We
It
say
is crude,
fuck.
but it's your choice at the end of the day, not his.
The problem I've got is when you do like the man and you still telling him to fuck off.
There is a problem
I'm
with
so
that, yeah.
on fuck off mode. I don't have to switch you off. That's like,
I haven't quite got to that.
I'm just like, but I looked at him for 0.3 seconds and I didn't like spit in his face. Why doesn't he know I'm interested? It's getting darker,
She's a man
and your
eater.
top is glowing.
I know.
just
Well, not only a
what?
topic
My
glowing. I think
goosebumps
she's-
are up. My
I'm all
goosebumps.
for feminism, but you know,
my
there's a
goosebumps.
bra issue as well. Because I think we can tell the temperature's dropping.
Can I just say I could mow down a firing squad right now?
We'll be able to tune any radio station we like on those.
I've got my own antennae going on here. Oh dear. I'm surprised the
that's
cocktails
funny.
aren't gathering around me right now. But
no, it's because our fuck off mode. That's why Lola saw them off.
Aren't you, Lola?
There's healthy self-preservation going on.
But there
And
is
I'm
a set.
just
Yeah, of course
wondering,
there is.
You don't want to eradicate the people who are naturally just want to are curious and want to understand to gain a better level of empathy and understanding.
think
and
you can-
compassion,
I think-
as opposed to the ones who want to have power over too.
But you know the difference.
You can tell the difference as a person. I think
Yeah.
Anne has. I have my trans thing. Anne has a disability. You tend to gain an understanding of who has a genuine interest in you and will ask questions that are not offensive, that would like to get to know you, for instance, rather than I'm going to ask a really ridiculous question, so I have this like demeaning power.
Yeah.
Is it to control you?
It's a form of control, I think, but it's that feeling
It
they
is.
get their sense of power from
Yeah.
it, and I
They
think
enjoy making you feel uncomfortable. They think
And
they're
I
going to
think-
make you feel self-conscious, and that makes them feel powerful. They've controlled your emotion, even if it's just for 5 minutes, because they're so pathetic.
Could you-
That's the only power they can get in their
Could you not
lives.
argue that this can happen in relationships?
of course it can. It can happen in any relationship. It doesn't matter whether it's male, female, disability, trans. It can happen anywhere and anything.
But aren't you saying that you think human beings aren't very nice then?
Generally,
A lot.
no, I don't think human beings are very nice.
They're horrible. Everyone's an arsehole.
Well, we said earlier, didn't we?
The world is full of arseholes.
So you tend to think
governed by,
you tend to think
psychopaths.
everybody's really, really lovely, and it has a genuine purpose in
Because
life.
I like to see the good in people.
But that's
I'm
because
not-
you can afford to, because you haven't had the same experiences.
But when you have bad experiences with people, you tend to judge people on the negative prior to the positive. They have to tend to prove the positive rather than
And they never do.
and I tend to get the same feedback that on the whole you get let down and you get proved right in your negative feedback than you do on the positive.
And the thing is, can I go?
Can I just say I've maybe been quite lucky then, because I'm starting to see what you are saying now in nearly 40
Yeah, but you've only
years
ever
of
lived
age.
like 5 minutes from home. You've never seen anything of the world, Jules.
But just look at history, that societies, that governments, that leaders will take advantage of a situation where they see somebody weak and they can take over that situation and they can manipulate.
No, what you're saying isn't though all human relationships is a form of dance, and we're testing each other to get connection. Do you not believe that human beings fundamentally are looking to connect?
I've never
and have a
needed
common
to
ground?
quiz
Because
somebody.
what are we doing now? For example, we're connecting through some sort of.
Look,
common
I've
ground.
known- no.
Isn't that erotic and sensual?
No, I'm sorry, but I know people who are trans, and I've only known them since they've transitioned, and I do not need to ask them about their past to know them better. I have never felt the urge to dissect
No.
every aspect of their lives. You know, what have you chopped off? When did you chop it off? What was it like being chopped off? What's it like now? I don't need to know all that crap, and I wouldn't want to.
Shall I say?
Because my curiosity, even if I did have curiosity for the, to have those questions answered, does not matter. It's more important that my friend feels respected and
absolutely.
safe
Yeah.
in my company. That is more important to me, that she feels comfortable around me, than it is for me to know some stupid little bit of information, which at the end of the day is useless information. It doesn't apply anymore. It's irrelevant. So if I were to ask that question to somebody, and to be honest with you, I wouldn't even make my worst enemy feel like that.
Yeah.
Because it's cheap.
What
More than anything, it's pathetic and it's cheap.
What context are we talking? Are we talking the context? It's just friendship, getting to know someone. I'm trying to understand the context.
Well, getting to know somebody, just, I don't know. I don't really know what context there needs to be asking questions like that, intrusive questions into somebody's past, into their gender, into, I mean, obviously, yes, I asked at the beginning. That's the first time I've heard talk about her transition. I've never asked her that before. The only reason I'm asking it now is to provide some background for the people who are listening. But I personally, I would say, I mean, I don't have interest, not because I don't care, but because I think it's irrelevant to me.
Yeah.
I see the person before me now.
Yeah.
I don't see where there would ever be a time when you do need to be interested in those sorts of things. And I think it says about the type of person you are if you do have those questions, and you do need to know.
So it's about intrusion. It's about invading someone's
The only time,
private space.
the only thing I would say,
emotionally,
but the only time I would say that's possibly come up is where we had a friend who's a cis woman, and she had very short hair. I know it sounds really stupid and superficial, but we assumed she was a lesbian
Yeah.
because, rightly or wrongly, we did. And it was also the way she said things, how she was. I also thought at one point she was getting into a relationship with another woman. A few of us assumed that she was a lesbian. It turned out she wasn't a lesbian. But somebody kind of had to ask the question, or we had to sort of create the conversation. But we did it kind of respectfully,
Yeah.
And it
That's
was
just
in a way to
curiosity.
invite her to open up about it if she wanted to, but not demanding, not asking straight out questions and asking her because we wanted to tick a question off a list. Because she's a person, she's a human being. She may not be comfortable talking about those things. And you look back to your own
That's
experiences.
just common decency to me.
Yeah.
That's just relational common decency. You have this respect for just your other human beings. I mean, surely that's just it.
Yeah.
When I met Sel, I said to Sel, "I don't feel you have to go through any extreme procedure because I accept you for you."
My only point, though, that I would say is, like with my friend who transitioned quite easily, is that she is in so much denial that she's trans, and if you kind of left the conversation open for her to talk about it, she never would. So unless men found out from other people that she was trans, they would never know. And I think the concern is that should you tell someone if you are trans, if they're interested in you sexually, and you're not exactly telling them to piss off, and you're allowing that attention to progress, and that person's getting an attachment to you of some kind, should you tell them? Because the problem with this person is because my friend wouldn't tell him that she was trans, and he found out from someone else, he got quite angry about it. And I think it's potentially opening up the door to putting yourself into a dangerous or risky situation. But that's one side of it. But the other side of it is, do people have a right to know? If they're going to be sharing a life with you, do they have a right to know something like that? And I'm a bit on the fence with that, to be honest.
I think it's very, very remiss of you as a trans person to not give, especially if you're, I mean, a one-off date might be a different thing. Maybe a second date might be a different thing. But if you're getting into an involvement with somebody and they're caring about you and you care about them, then I think you need to be honest. Because I think, and from my perspective, if I was going to go on a dating site and I was going to do that sort of thing, I'd be upfront and honest to start with, because I wouldn't want to get to a position where I was going on dates with people that didn't know anything about me, didn't know the truth, and then I was having to explain that later. There's no illusion as to what you're getting into, and you then like the person regardless of whether they're trans or not, for the same reason that you'd like them anyway.
Sel was always honest when we first met, and I really felt safe about that. That made me feel quite safe. There was honesty in Sel,
because I think,
and I really, and there is still honesty in Sel, because Sel will say, I'm not a woman, I don't profess to be, I am who I am, and I think I feel that makes me feel safe, because I can identify when people aren't a bit opaque. It makes me feel nervy.
But I think from a trans person's perspective as well, you've also got that you're trying to prove to the world and portray to the world that you are something that you ultimately, and I hate to say this like in such blunt terms, but ultimately you're not. And it doesn't matter how you feel about it inside, it's how you portray yourself to the rest of the world. And the problem is, especially when you get to dating, you open a whole different can of worms, because on a daily basis I can go to work, I can portray myself as female, but then I'm not intimate with work. When you get into a relationship with somebody, and I think especially if you're going to be intimate with someone, then honesty is always the best policy, because especially if you're up front with them, they have not only
you're giving power you're not having power over. You're
giving power to that person
to
choose whether they accept you for who you are. And if they can accept that, then there's a basis for moving forward. If you
should clarify this. I just want to say you should clarify this really relatively at the beginning.
I would say
allowing for emotional attachment.
I think also with my friend, I felt almost that she enjoyed not telling men, or like fooling them in a way. And I think she also does, because there's almost a competitive streak I've noticed in her with cis women.
There is a.
I'm not saying that of all trans, is this particular person.
But I think there is an innate part of being trans where, especially if you are able to convince everybody that you are female, the utterance of the fact that you could possibly have been male, or that you are male, it's like somebody coming up and putting the knife in your guts and turning it, because you just go, holy shit, they found me out, and I've been trying to portray this screen to everyone. There's honesty about who you are and being true to yourself, and then this is because being trans is partly, from my point of view, and this is probably where I piss all the trans people off, is you portray this facade to the world.
But we all do. We all have
everybody portrays a facade to the world, but I think with trans it's predominantly more because you're like, you wake up in the morning, you're not in the wrong body, you do look at yourself in the mirror and you go, oh, I don't like this, don't like that, but it's not maybe as deeply felt and as inherent as with a trans person. Whereas a trans person wakes up, sees their body in the mirror, feels utter disgust
But they shouldn't.
and self-loathing.
They shouldn't.
No, regardless of whether they should or shouldn't,
No,
that's
right.
predominantly how.
See,
I mean,
that's really, I really didn't know that because my trans friends always seem so comfortable. In fact, they're always almost this relief.
It is a relief.
They feel happier and they
Yeah.
look so comfortable.
happy.
I'm really shocked at that.
But if you get down to the utter like bare bones of it, and I'm not saying that. Look, I'm much happier,
Yeah.
Yeah.
much happier now than
But I
I
didn't
was.
realise. I thought that gone. Maybe I'm being naive there.
Yeah, I think.
I thought that the
was naive.
dysmorphia had gone once they'd transitioned.
I don't think it.
didn't
I did. To be
realise-
fair, perfectly honest. I mean, from my perspective, I don't think it ever goes because I think ultimately, you were never born in the body that you should have had.
Yeah.
So you have this brain that does one thing that's telling you. And I was brought up in the 70s, 80s.
Yeah.
I had no reference points whatsoever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was in, the 70s were predominantly misogynistic. The 80s were predominantly, until we got to the mid 80s, at least until Thatcher and like all of the women's rights movements really started to push forward in the mid 80s. It was a very misogynistic
Yeah.
society. I was brought up in a very, very misogynistic society as a boy,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and with no reference point. You couldn't go to a library and go, well, I feel a bit different. What section do I look in?
But do
Because you
think
would never
felt
have
for
found a
women?
book.
Did you feel for women and girls? Did you feel for them? You could see that they were second class. Was there something was there an affinity?
I
there?
think when you're between 4, 8, 12, 15, you're not really looking at the rest of the world and affinities with. I had many more girlfriends than I had boyfriends.
Yeah.
I predominantly got on better with girls the whole time I went through school.
Yeah.
I tried my best to fit in with the boys. In America as a teenager, if you were a successful dating, be able to pick up girls left, right and centre, then I was the one that could do it out of all my friends. When we went out on a Friday or Saturday night, I would be the one that would pick the girls up
Yeah.
with no hesitation.
But,
I could have had my pick of any of them.
I mean, I can talk from my experience now. So you've never made me feel at all pressured in any way.
But don't forget that in America, the girls are much more forward than here, than the UK. But so we would be driving down the street, and the girls next to us would pull up next to us at a set of traffic lights and go, "Get your friend in the back to talk to us." And I'd be sitting in the back seat, and I'd have to put the back window down and go, "Hi, girls."
Yeah.
They were the ones that would pick me out above my two friends in the front seat.
Incels particularly like to make out that women are attracted to bad boys. That's not true. In fact, actually, I think all the men I've been with in a sexual way, they've made me feel comfortable. I've never slept with a bloke who's chatted me up, who's given me a chat up line or flirted out.
And I never did. I know I never did that either.
No, that's what I mean. It's
Yourself,
feeling
you didn't
comfortable
have an agenda
and
with them,
safe
that's
with
what it
someone.
was. You were just being you, and I think women feel.
And I think-
comfortable
Which
with
is
that.
why if the nice guy is not getting any sex, that's because he ain't nice. That's the, whole, the friend zoning argument.
Yeah, and I think ultimately when I was a teenager and I was confused because obviously I was still going through the can't shower with the boys. It makes me feel really uncomfortable after PE. I don't want to be in the locker rooms with the boys. I don't. But I've got two male best friends.
Yeah.
And like they said to you last year, I was the one that oh, are we going out? Yep. Oh, we're still waiting for him. He's still doing his hair. He's still
He's
still making sure he's got the right clothes on.
Yes, I remember.
He's still
there
got.
was a speck of. I remember saying. I remember him having a speck of dirt on the shoes and on his sneakers, and I remember thinking, God.
The only thing I would say about that is I can get ready in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But again, that can be a predominantly male trait.
Yeah.
Oh, of course it can. The macaroni, as we said in the Georgian era, the
Yeah.
Georgians were the peak. Georgian males were the peak.
Yeah, most men I know spend more time quaffing than I do.
Yes.
So ultimately, it could have been a predominantly male trait, but I knew ultimately, underneath it all, I always felt different, and I didn't feel like I fitted in.
No.
I tried very hard to fit in, and the two people.
I've been with Sal 10 years, right? We've had children together. I can tell you now, I've never felt objectified in the slightest by Sal.
This is where I'm going wrong. I need a trans woman. So it's like, stay away from me right now.
I'm
not sure it's true.
Don't get me wrong, Sel's not perfect, and neither am
Oh, fuck
I,
no.
and we know that. But ultimately, Sel's a good person, and I know this. And you
But
know,
it's like I was telling you about
and
these
I-
feminist men, cis men, on that page, which takes the piss out of incels, and to see so many straight cis men on there on the side of women.
Yeah.
They could look like the back of a bus. Their attractiveness has just gone up 100-fold in my
I'll tell you
eyes.
what it is. I can sum it up with Sel. Sel, I don't feel, this is my personal innate, my senses pick up, and I've always picked up about Sel. I don't feel Sel's ever tried to sort of control me or confine me in any way. We're not perfect, you know, we've had rows. And
Don't forget also that I was brought up in a predominantly female household.
I've never felt sort of pinned down by Sel. I felt pinned down by culture and society and family and everything else. Sel is a good person, you know, and I know this, and I hope Sel knows this about me, and this is where I want to bridge the gap.
Oh,
between...
this is like marriage guidance.
Marriage counselling.
I've never kept a relationship together. I normally split them apart.
So, Anne, I think
Too
you've done
late for
better.
that.
You've done better than our couples counsellor.
Yeah, there you
have.
go.
Crikey, I think you need to be a couples
Ah,
therapist. You know,
common
90
cause.
quid she charges an hour as
There
well.
you go, and you got so free. I must start charging
You
to
know,
do
and
these
this
podcasts.
is where it comes down to is the communication, and you know, and it's hard. It's just hard living with someone. Full stop. Whether they're male, female, monkey, you know, donkey, whatever you want to identify as, it's hard.
This is why I don't live with people.
But ultimately, yes, yeah. But you know, ultimately, when it comes to gender and control and power over, I personally don't feel Sel has ever tried to inflict that on me. We've definitely had.
But that's why I
you
think
know,
gay relationships work better.
Yeah.
And that's why I think gay male relationships work so well, because there is a common respect and understanding that there just isn't between cis men, cis women.
No, I completely agree
And
with
it's
that.
a war zone. Every single one of my relationships has turned into a war zone.
Yeah.
Because, you know, as much as they want to write me off as a psycho or I'm making issues that aren't there, there are issues there. They are just so blind to them because they assume a position above me.
It's an inherent idea that they are superior.
Men are better than women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing Sel and I said, we never get married. You know, we didn't have this feeling of needing to ever marry and just have this common ground of.
Well,
you
when
know,
I got
we're
married
raising...
once and I'd never do it again,
No,
so that had a.
So there are common grounds, you know, between lesbianism values and trans women. There are threads there that have this common ground and this common language. They are very different, but they're all there. You know, it's calibration. Relationships are calibrating the paradoxes and the similarities all at the same time. But ultimately, I'm just going by what I'm genuinely feel is that, you know, Sel hasn't ever put an agenda or inflicted control,
I think
power over.
I think if women
Don't
were
get
allowed,
me wrong, Sel's very assertive and has boundaries, and we've struggled. You know, like any relationship we've struggled. But
I don't think
ultimately,
that-
our common value is, you know, we.
I think that if women were allowed to be honest with themselves and listen to their instincts, which they're told not to all the time by men, because then what would the sexual predators do?
Yeah.
You know, I think if we listen to our instincts, you can tell whether somebody is a good person or not. You can tell who's safe and who isn't. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of very manipulative people out there, and actually the relationships I've gotten into where the men have turned out to be raging narcissists, and yes, I am using that word, but they didn't start out that way. And that's the thing, you know, I keep being asked by various people, why do you go for men like that? I don't. I've never cracked onto anybody in my entire life and never would. And secondly, I've not chosen that bloke especially because I think he's, you know, a bad boy, or because I like being treated like shit. It's because he's put himself out as being the total opposite, and then after 5 minutes, when he thinks he's safe and secure in that relationship and he's got me, then I see the true colours come out. We can usually tell, though, these men, you know, do behave like this, and yes, we can get suckered in, but I think that's usually, you're looking for something at a time where you probably would have been a little bit more cautious. But most of the time, I think when we meet somebody, we can tell whether or not we like them, we're going to get on with them. You get a sense about people.
Well, it's friendship,
but it's going,
isn't it?
but it's going back to what we said right at the start of all this, when I said about TERFs, and to sit there intellectualising and we define and we fuck flies over definitions of words. when at the end of the day, just sit down with a trans person and fucking speak to them for 5 minutes.
Yeah,
It
it's
will
like when-
change your mind.
you know,
It's that simple. And I can't describe it. I can't define it. Because what makes a woman, what makes a man,
Well,
we
so-
can't sit there and say it's just having a dick or having a vagina. It's a lot more complicated
Don't get
than
me
that.
wrong, our prejudices have come out. Sel called me a TERF and a radical feminist.
Well, you are a
militant-
TERF.
I've never called you a TERF.
A militant.
Well, I'll
called
call
you
her a
a-
TERF. She's
I've
a TERF.
called you a radical
The thing
feminist,
is, yeah,
but
you know,
never.
and I've said things to Seth. We've said things to each other. Ultimately, though, we've got a common ground.
That's what I'm talking about. The
that's-
empathy, which is why I do
Yeah.
not understand why feminists are against
Yeah.
trans people.
And I think you're right. I think is that they're making judgments based on a movement, not individuals, and not people that they've sat down and had a conversation with. They're making assumptions based on a generalization and a view. It's like a flat earther saying to me, I know the earth's flat because I've got this view, and four other people I know have got this view.
Yeah.
And you go, but science has proved it's a globe and we revolve around the sun. Nope, it's flat. Bollocks. Why don't you sit down with the scientists and just talk about it?
Okay, so we're just going to wrap this up
Look,
now, I think.
Let's just say that we have a common ground, and that is the fact that we've got empathy and understanding, I hope.
Yeah.
And, this is all pettiness, this whole thing of TERF trans. Ultimately, that common sense will prevail, won't it?
Well, I hope so. I mean,
think
common
we've said
sense has
about
not
the
really
sports
prevailed
thing,
in the past.
we've all agreed on the sports thing. We're all relatively intelligent human beings. We know that we've said about the sports thing, there should be a separate category, or that we've said about the separate groups, and of course, if there's safeguarding needed, that's fine. We need to be aware of segregation. I thank you, Anne, for educating me about this, because I didn't,
You're welcome.
Before that, I just thought, everyone's entitled to their little space, and they kind of still are. However, we need to take into account that it could be a snowball effect. That's what you're saying? So we need to always take into account. Basically, we need to call out our own prejudices.
Yeah.
We need to sit there and say, look, I'm a prejudiced cow. I'm going to be a bit prejudiced about this. Let me be prejudiced, all right? I'm a bit anxious, or whatever it's called.
No, I won't let you be prejudiced. I don't tolerate that.
Okay, bugger. Okay, I can't get away.
Look, can I just get a word in?
Go
I
on
think
then.
just as a final note on this, I think that the with TERFs, I think they're living in a time still which isn't around anymore, and I get where they're coming from. I get what they had to face and why they formed the views they had, but they formed it on it's a skewed view based on previous trauma and a misconception or a misinterpretation of what these people are about. And I think ultimately these people are essential allies to our cause, and we cannot afford to turn away that kind of support.
Yeah, I think you're turning me. Sorry, Anne, I'm coming.
There you
out
go.
again. You've turned
Villains
me.
won.
Yeah, you've turned
Heroes
me.
nil.
You've turned me.
Okay, right, well-
However, we do still need to understand and appreciate the differences. Can we just say that?
Possibly, yeah, I suppose so.
You know,
in very
let's just
limited
have a-
context. Anyway, so thanks to everybody for listening. Thank you, Sel, for joining us.
No worries.
And Julia for letting us
Drag this on for so long.
yeah.
For the occasional ums and ahs.
Yeah. And for conceding defeat to me again. All right then. Okay. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.